Hi there. Today we're going to work on a map. This one here I took from a book that we're going to work on for our Ancient Rome and Ancient Greece unit for homeschooling. And we got the page from this Greek and Roman mythology book. And it has some passages and some quizzes and some maps. And so I took the map that has the Mediterranean Sea and the surrounding areas, and I scanned it, and then I used my Silhouette Cameo to trace it and cut basically a stencil of the map. And I did have to clean it up a little bit in the program, but I take out the legend and some of the text so that I just ended up with the stencil. So we're going to use watercolor paper. I also cut it on watercolor paper, but then we're also going to then draw it out on a clean sheet of watercolor paper, and we're going to emboss it as well. We're going to use a zig marker to emboss it, but I did want to trace it out with ink first so that we didn't end up with clear areas where we were using the embossing powder for the map. And then we just use clear embossing powder and a heat tool. We're using 2 different kinds of blue distress inks and 2 different colors of green. I think that's peeled paint and mowed lawn. And just a non-porous surface for the inks, and some water and paintbrushes to fill it in, and paper towel. So the first thing that we're going to do, when we cut it, some of the pieces came out completely, so they're taped together. But when I tape the stencil down to the watercolor paper below, I'll just tape those little pieces down as well. I just had them taped to the stencil so that I wouldn't forget where they were. Anyway, just use some double stick tape on the back of the stencil and on the smaller pieces, and got that all prepared. So this activity is for my almost 9-year-old and my 13-year-old. So that's 4th grade and 8th grade. And again, it's for our Ancient Rome and Ancient Greece unit. And so now my 8-year-old is tracing the stencil using a tombow marker. These are water-based markers, and I'm on the right side helping him out. It was a little more difficult than we expected, so I got in there with a marker too and helped him out with some of the areas. So it took a little while to get the whole stencil drawn on, and then we were able to peel it back, and you can see that it left us with a nice map. You can definitely see Italy there, and then the rest is the Mediterranean Sea, and then the surrounding continent. So we're using it's a marker that's somewhat clear, and it's used for embossing, and it kind of remains a little wet and slightly maybe sticky, just a little bit longer than a regular marker. And so we are tracing areas, and then that's my son there who traced that little piece up at the top, and now he's using some clear embossing powder on it. And then we will shake off the excess, and then we will use the heat tool to set that embossing powder. So this we decided to work in little steps because I wasn't sure how long it was going to stay wet for the embossing powder to stick. So we just did a little section there, and then he'll continue and trace all the other lines that are blue with the pen, and then we will go ahead and emboss sections of it with the clear embossing powder. So for the rest of the project, he mostly did all the tracing and the embossing. He's my little craft buddy, so he's pretty good at these kinds of things. He's only just a little bit slower than I am, but that's fine. He did well. So now we get to what I think is the fun part, and I checked the map first just to make sure that we were coloring in the right parts for the different seas and the bodies of water. And then he got started and I helped because it's just too much fun. So I know that I think the colors, the large one is chipped sapphire, I think the small one is salty ocean. And so we just had fun coloring in. And what was nice about the whole reason why we used the embossing powder basically was so that the watercolors don't seep into the land areas and vice versa, so that it was easy for him just to kind of get all the water areas, and the embossing kind of acts as a barrier so that the colors don't mix. So once we were done with all the water, then we got started on the land areas. And again, this was easy to keep the colors from mixing because of the embossing powder. And this is the fun part, really. This getting in here and getting it all colored up. So once we were done with that, I thought that maybe after all we needed some brown areas for Africa, since it really is a little deceiving to see all that green. So I just used the re-inker in Vintage Photo and just put a couple drops on that little palette there, and then he went ahead and colored in the lower parts of the northern parts of Africa. So the only thing that we have left to do is to do all the labeling, and we'll do that with a permanent marker or ballpoint pen after it's all been dried. So I hope you enjoyed it, and check out the pictures at the end. Thanks for watching.